beacon and a torchbearer of that black flame to help guide others, then guide others, then guide others. I very much think that it's something that pours from witch to witch to witch to witch. Hey friends, it's Jasmine, and I hope that you all are doing well. If you are new to my channel, welcome. I am a witchy content creator on several different platforms. So if you would like to find me on other platforms such as like TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, all of my links are gonna be down below. If you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for coming back and supporting me and this channel. It really means a lot. Please make sure if you like this video to give it a like and subscribe to my channel if you would like to see more from me. And if you're already subscribed, make sure that you hit that bell and have all of your notifications turned on. Sometimes YouTube's not always great about notifying people when I post or I go live. So if you want to stay up to date, hit that bell. So in today's video, I kind of want to talk about what I am calling the Priestix path. And this is my own personal journey with the divine and my expression of that journey with the divine. Things that I have learned along the way from being a devotee of the Dark Mother archetype and being a practicing witch, living my life as a priestess of those mysteries and what that means. Keep in mind that this is my experience, and you are more than welcome to kind of take what you like and leave what you don't from this. So in no way am I saying everything in this video is like some sort of gospel. This is my UPG, and these are my experiences. And this is my own sort of gnosis built on real lived experience. Also, you guys, it is so hot where I am right now. It is like almost 70 something degrees outside. I'm melting, it's hot. And I feel like our air conditioning is trying to keep up. So if I look like I'm hot or melting, it probably isn't highlighter. Okay, so my first bulletin point that I have here, which I do have a little bit of a list here in front of me. So if you catch me kind of looking over, I'm just looking at these bulletin points. I haven't really scripted this video because I just kind of want to do it off the cuff with you, but I do have some bulletin points that I need to make sure that I touch on. You know, if you know me, I have a habit of rambling, and I want to make sure that if I do ramble, I at least make the points I want to make in this video. So the first point is the Dark Mother archetype and understanding this archetype. So many neo-pagans and some witches work with the MMC archetype, also known as the Maiden Mother Crone archetype. And I don't necessarily take issue with people wanting to work with that archetype. I do think that the MMC can be a little bit limiting on what exactly womanhood is. And I say that because it's looking at the experience of the divine feminine in correlation to her fertility almost exclusively, right? We have the maiden here as like this beautiful, young, radiant goddess, and she's associated with the waxing or the growing moon. And then we have the full moon associated with the pregnant belly and the full fertility of the divine mother. And then we have the waning moon, the decreasing moon associated with the crone. And typically you will find correspondences that link that particular moon phase to waning fertility. Just like the maiden and the waxing is waxing fertility. You will find the maiden associated with kind of the beginning stages of life and the crone associated with the end cycles of life. And that's kind of where it stops. For those of you who are into lunar astrology or just following the cycles of the moon and its phases and your spell work and in your practice, you will maybe see that there is a moon phase missing from this dichotomy. And I understand that trinities are powerful and important and are found in many different cosmologies. So once again, I don't want to take away from that. If you find the MMC to be powerful and meaningful for you and your practice, by all means, continue to work within that paradigm. But I would just kind of like to introduce and talk about a paradigm that I have been working with that has been foundational for me and my practice. So that last phase that isn't really touched on would be the dark moon. And I run a workshop called the Dark Goddess Workshop. And in this workshop, we go into this in more graphic detail. But to kind of outline it for you, the dark moon is kind of the parallel opposite of the full moon. So the full moon being the moon illuminated at its highest or at its peak, whereas the dark moon is completely shrouded in darkness. So there is no moonlight. Now, obviously, no matter what phase the moon is in, it is spherical. So we are going to have the entirety of the moon's energy radiating onto the earth, regardless of how much of it is illuminated. But in a lot of occult practices, the energy of the moon is sort of interpreted by how much it is illuminated. So the dark moon is no illumination. So if you look out in the sky, you should not even be able to see a sliver of the new moon. And I do want to preface that aspect of the new moon there, because even some astrologers will kind of conflate the two, and they will call new moons and dark moons by the same name. I don't believe that this is correct. I feel like a new moon is those first couple days of that waxing sliver starting to build, whereas a dark moon, there is no sliver of moonlight in the sky. The sky is just a complete blanket of stars and universal darkness. So we have the full moon linked to the sort of white goddess or the divine mother and the divine nurturer. And we have so much magic linked to that archetype. And I've had some really great conversations with some friends that are also dark mother devotees as well, who have kind of drawn parallels between this mother sort of concept, or just even in traditional witchcraft with kind of separating the goddess in her two forms. You know, the goddess of the light half of the year, the goddess of the dark half of the year. The goddess associated with life and the goddess associated with death. So for me personally, I associate that dark moon phase with our dark mother, with the dark goddess. And in my eyes, kind of what makes a dark goddess dark. I'm not saying that light, you know, the full moon is a light goddess per se. I don't know if I necessarily even use, you know, dark mother, light mother in this sort of paradigm, because I don't really play into the notion that dark equals bad, light equals good. It's dark because it's the dark moon. So it's not dark because it's synonymous with evil. It's dark because it is in correlation to that phase of the moon. Are there goddesses associated with light? Absolutely. But I'm not using a dark light paradigm in this sort of aspect of working with the goddess through the phases of the moon. So in this, the crone is still connected to, you know, arcane wisdom and death to a degree as well, but like she is still living. So if we think about this sort of journey of the goddess through the phases of the moon, right? Like being born at the new moon, being birthed, and then growing and learning and raising energy in that sort of like maiden form, and then kind of being at this peak, at this height with the full moon, and then decreasing with our wise crone of arcane wisdom, and then dying and being death incarnate in the dark moon, to then sit in that sort of darkness and then be reborn through the new moon. So I perceive this sort of full lunar aspect of the goddess to be immortal and incarnate. I perceive her to be cyclical. So it doesn't end with the crone, and she goes back into the belly of the universe, back into herself, into death, into the void, into the abyss, into the divine cosmos, to then rebirth herself as the new moon, and then building into maiden mother crone, and then entering that cycle of dark moon and death again. And I do think that this kind of switches the paradigm from it being more focused on the entirety of the divine feminine story, as opposed to just limiting it to her fertility alone. I think that this should go without saying, but women, we are more than our fertility alone. There's much more aspects to what womanhood is than simply birthing babies and being fertile. Exactly makes a goddess associated with the dark moon to me? I associate these aspects. I associate death, of course. I associate witchcraft. I associate prophecy, divination. I associate war. I associate path working. I associate astral projection. I associate all of these elements that kind of, when put together, fit a goddess within the box of Dark Mother. And even the title Mother is sort of a little bit of a play on words here, because it's not necessarily like literally Dark Mother, it's dark matter as well. So it's that aspect of the darkness incarnate that exists within the universe. Like darkness, without it, literally light would not exist without there being darkness. I was reading, I believe it was The Witch's Devil by Roger J. Horn recently. And there's like some quotes in there that I don't have it right in front of me, so I might not be quoting it exactly. But there was a passage in the book that really stuck out to me and resonated with me. And it was talking about looking at the goddess in traditional witchcraft as like this cosmic weaver of fate, that within her, the witch's devil is found. And that light bearer aspect of the witch's devil, the flames between the horns burn not only just between the horns, but behind that would be the Dark Mother, the darkness. That light existing within darkness. Devoting my practice and my life to being a priestess of this cosmic archetype. And I've made some other videos about working with the Dark Mother archetype. If you're interested in sort of my personal journey and other things like that, you can go watch those videos. They are here on my channel. But I believe that the Dark Mother is about very much self-deification. I view the Dark Mother, or as some of my friends have called her, the devouring mother, very much to be sort of embodying aspects of the left-hand path, values and virtues being kind of associated with the self, apotheosis, as opposed to annihilation. Apotheosis kind of being uplifting ourselves to be one with God and becoming God and recognizing our divine godhood within ourselves, as opposed to the annihilation of the ego and, you know, pushing that ego down in order to be in service of the divine. So also the black flame. Now, the black flame is an internal aspect. It's something that is brought up in meditations and even working with Lucifer and other infernal lords. The black flame is thought to be that inner sort of witch fire that burns within us as witches of the left-hand path, or as witches devoted to these infernal lords, the witch's devil, the Dark Mother. And the black flame is a flame that can be visualized really from within, and it's a flame that burns black in the darkness. It's something that you can feel, it's something that you can sense, and it's sometimes something that you can see within yourself or in the other world through witch flight, or even in the physical through projecting and visualization into the physical midworld. That black flame is sort of the essence of magic that burns within us. That is magic incarnate within us. I really enjoy the stories like Charles Leland's The Gospel of Aradia, where Diana kind of, you know, put herself on earth as Aradia. And Aradia taught the peasant folks the art of witchcraft and poisons and maledictions and blessings and banishings and things like that. And there's also belief that there was not one, but multiple Aradias. And I kind of like this fantasy that the Aradia would be more similar to that of a title than an individual's name. Okay, so this is editing jazz here. I also just wanted to add to that I think it's really powerful to think of the story, the Gospel of Aradia, with Aradia's father being Lucifer and her mother being Diana. And this sort of like dichotomy between this lord of infernal light and the goddess of the moon having a sacred union and birthing the child, the holy child Aradia. You know, I do think that Lucifer, Diana in this story very much as almost like God parents. I don't necessarily believe that it's a literal thing. I think that when it comes to whether it be like neo-paganism or just spirituality and building a connection with pre-Abrahamic gods in general, you know, having a god parent in the sense like calling yourself a maiden of the Morrigan, right? Like in my Morrigan dedication tattoo on my sleeve. I don't literally view myself as like the Morrigan as my biological mother. It's kind of like a play on words. And I think that Aradia is more like a title for a high priestess that teaches and guides other witches to become the new Aradias, to then teach and guide other witches to become the new Aradias. I believe that the Aradia would be sort of a embodiment for her community of the Dark Mother, of the great goddess. I believe that she would be teaching from that sort of standpoint in her community. And so there has to kind of be multiple Aradias if we were to think of this sort of story and this cosmology to be more literal. If we were to entertain that idea, there would really have to be generations of Aradias sort of initiating and guiding and leading the Aradias of the future to then continue carrying on this sort of black flame, this witch fire that lives within. And that's a big part of the Dark Mother's Priestix path, is tending those sacred flames. Similar to how maybe priestesses of the goddess like Vesta, with their Vestal virgins, would be tending those flames. I believe that the devotees of the Dark Mother tend the flames of that witch fire within themselves, and then teach others how to ignite and find that flame within themselves to then continue passing that magic on through generations, through lineage, through the red soul, through magic. So per kind of looking at this from a left-hand path perspective, we want to be looking at this as how can we uplift our egos and uplift ourselves to that of the frequency of the Dark Mother? How can we become one with God as opposed to submitting ourselves to and in service to God? How can we become one with? How can we be a living incarnation or a Deva of this energy? And I think that is through your acts of good work. I think that is through your lifestyle. I think you show your faith and your commitment by doing your best to embody the faces of the Dark Goddess. And so what are the faces of the Dark Goddess? Well, I have some thoughts on goddesses that I very much associate as Dark Mothers, but you will very much build your own relationship and find what makes sense for you as you kind of work with this sort of paradigm. For me, early on in my journey with the Dark Mother, it really started with the Morrigan, and some of you may remember that. In 2016, I dedicated myself to the Raven Goddess, to her, through this dedicational tattoo. This was really the first face of the Dark Goddess that I actualized and that I really started working with in my practice. And that then kind of led me to working with Hecate. And then Hecate sort of led me to working with Kali, and Kali led me to working with Lilith. I don't believe that all these goddesses are the same. And I think that it would be offensive to their cultures that they originate from to sort of convolute them and just say that they're all one. But I do have sort of this soft polytheistic view that there is this divine cosmic source, and then it sort of radiates down from that source. So when I'm thinking of the Dark Mother, I'm thinking of this archetype of the great goddess. So the full moon being associated maybe with the white goddess and the light half of the year, the dark moon being associated with the dark goddess or the dark half of the year. Both halves make up this whole that is the great goddess, that is the source, that is all. Okay, and then through that, different faces are personified via different cultures, geographic locations, language, you know, all of those things. Because we do find goddesses, let's say, of husbandry, agriculture, love, war, death. You know, we do find these sort of aspects of like goddesses associated with art and poetry and inspiration, or the forge and fire, or of water. Like we find these sorts of human archetypes because I believe we have sort of created the gods as much as we are created by God. I believe that we have sort of personified divinity in our own image and given them aspects in relation to the culture and geographic landscape and language that, you know, these goddesses have originated from. Another deity that I would heavily associate as a dark goddess that I think many people maybe wouldn't necessarily, I would associate Isis heavily. I mean, she was one of the first necromancers. She played a huge part in bringing her husband literally back to life. And that sort of necromancy and that necromantic art and that witchcraft and magic, Heka magic, which is an interesting parallel with Hecate, to me is so deeply connected to this Dark Mother current. So when I think about Apotheosis as a left-hand path practitioner, I think about how I can work with maybe individual faces of the Dark Mother in order to help me with things I have in my life currently, and then thus for kind of being an example to be able to lead others. So I definitely think that, you know, let's say your goddess that you are working with is Hecate. I know that Hecate, I feel like, because she is such a path-working sort of goddess, I feel like she oftentimes is one of the first goddesses that really greets you at the gates of the Dark Mother. And some people continue to stay working with Hecate for the rest of their practice. And some people go on to working with other aspects of the Dark Mother. So how can you embody Hecate? What does Hecate represent to you? When I think of all of these dark goddesses that I've mentioned, I think of magic, I think of prophecy, I think of witchcraft, I think of transformation, I think of death, I think of war, I think of the dark half of the year. I think all of those aspects are what sort of make that up. And how can you, as a priestess of the great goddesses, black form of the black goddess, how can you embody that? I can't necessarily say what that looks like for you.
Okay, this is Editing Jazz again, and I want to just say, again, when it comes to being a Deva of your chosen face of the Dark Mother, it's totally fine if that face changes based on your own needs or the guidance from the Great Goddess or your path. When I think about working with Hecate, when I think about being a face of Hecate, I think about being a shepherd. I think about being a guide. When I think about working with Lilith, being a Deva of Lilith, I think about liberation, personal empowerment, sacred sexuality. When I think of the Morrigan, I think of war and battle and fate, prophecy. When I think of Isis, I very much think of necromancy, I guess in a similar way with Hecate and her connection to the underworld. But I see Hecate more as a Lampadios figure of a shepherd sort of to and from the underworld when it comes to, you know, witch flight or astral travel, death work, and Isis more working with death in the physical world, in the mid-world. I think of agriculture, I think of necromancy, I think of resurrection with Isis. And Kali, in a lot of her mythology, she is the Black Mother, Kali Ma. She is the devouring mother, the destroyer of our egos, who breaks our souls apart to refragment them and to make us better. So I mean, the list can go on when it comes to dark goddesses and who they are and what they inspire us to do as priestesses of this cosmic current. But you will definitely build your own correlations as well. So I just wanted to say that.
But you will find good works in order to uplift that in your practice, and to also be a beacon and a torch bearer of that black flame to help guide others. Then guide others, then guide others. I very much think that it's something that pours from witch to witch to witch to witch. So I hope that some of that has brought a little bit of clarity to what I mean when I'm talking about the Dark Mother, when I'm talking about apotheosis, or when I talk about being a living Deva of the divine. Because I very much believe that you, me, us, them, right? We are the faces of God incarnate into the flesh. In some of even the Abrahamic holy books, it's mentioned that we are made in God's image, so to speak. And I believe we can kind of subvert that and look at it from the lens that we have put divine energy into the flesh and personified it in our own form for us to best understand it. And so that's sort of my relationship. Like I said, if you're interested in more dark mother stuff, more dark goddess stuff, I do have some other videos here on my channel that you can go check out, or comment down below if you have questions or suggestions for me in regards to this or things that I could elaborate on more. I hope that you all, though, are doing well. I hope that you're blessed, highly favored, honey. I'm getting ready to go teach level 2 palmistry tonight at the store, so I think I've rambled enough. I'm going to get off of here. But yes, blessed be, and I will see you in hell.